I had written a speech, 3 pages long, blessings, childhood memories, even a few jokes to make the room laugh. I practiced it over and over, ready to stand proud as a father, in front of hundreds of guests. But when I stood up, microphone in hand, and saw my son's radiant face, I tore it apart. The sound of paper ripping echoed through the hall, sheets falling on the polished stone floor, right by the groom's shiny black shoes. Silence. The entire room froze. My son's eyes changed in a heartbeat, from joy to confusion to fear. The bride gripped his hand tighter. My wife crushed her handkerchief, her fingers turning white. A bead of sweat slid down her temple. The whole place felt like a courtroom. Whispers. A few awkward laughs. Maybe they thought it was a joke, a father trying to put on a show. But I didn't laugh. I looked at everyone. My voice sank lower. This moment was supposed to be filled with laughter. I was supposed to talk about when my son first learned to walk, about the day he broke the neighbor's window. But I can't. Not today. Because there's a truth I've buried for more than 10 years. The silence grew heavier. Suspicious eyes. Confused faces. Some even annoyed. My son shook his head, begging me to stop. But I couldn't. I had stayed silent for too long. I had lived half my life with betrayal under my own roof. And I swore, the day my son walked into marriage, he would know. A marriage cannot be built on lies. I paused, took a deep breath. My heart pounded in my chest. And then I said the words that froze the entire room. I'm not here to ruin a wedding. I'm here to save a marriage that hasn't even begun. My name is Gabriel Hano. I'm 52 years old. And if you only looked at the surface, you might think I've won the game called life. I own a transport company, a wide house with a 2-car garage, a family that looks complete. But after half a century on this earth, I've learned one thing. Nothing is ever as perfect as it seems. I grew up poor. My father was a mechanic. My mother worked as a cashier at a supermarket. I wore hand-me-downs from cousins, carried cold rice wrapped in paper to school just to save money. Some nights, I'd hear my parents fighting over the power bill or the rent, while I clutched my pillow and pretended to sleep. That childhood carved a vow into me. My kids would never grow up in fear or in want. So when I stepped into life, I chose work. I drove trucks across states, dozing off in empty rest stops. I climbed my way up to warehouse manager, built connections, and finally started my own logistics company. No miracle. Just sweat, blood, and a lot of lonely nights. But through it all, there was Clara, the woman I loved, the woman who became my wife. Clara taught art. Gentle, sensitive. I still remember the first time I saw her painting by the window, sunlight on her brown hair. I knew then I wanted her in my life. We married after 1 year of dating. Ethan, my son, was born 12 months later. I'd never been so nervous. Holding that tiny, red little boy in my arms, I whispered to him, I promise I'll give you a life I never had. A few years later, our daughter Amelia joined the family. If Ethan was like me, serious, quiet, then Amelia carried her mother's dreamy soul. Those years were the best of my life. I worked like crazy. But every time I came home, Clara and the kids were waiting at the door. Even on nights I returned late, Clara left a warm meal on the table, her gentle smile welcoming me back. I believed, with all my heart, that was the picture I had spent my life chasing. And I didn't just have a family. I had a best friend, Mark. We met in college, shared bread, shared coins, stayed up all night to finish projects. Mark wasn't like me. He was outgoing, charming, the kind of man everyone liked. When I married Clara, he was my best man. When Ethan was born, he was the first to rush to the hospital, handing me a hot cup of coffee. For years, Mark was like family. He came over often, brought gifts for the kids, helped Clara cook, sometimes even crashed on our couch after late-night drinks. I used to joke with him, if I had 3 kids, you'd be the third. I said it with laughter, never knowing one day those words would come back to cut like a knife. Life looked peaceful. Ethan grew up, studied architecture, fell in love with Sophia, a sweet, gentle girl. I saw in his eyes the same light I once had when I loved Clara. When he told me he wanted to marry Sophia, my heart swelled with pride. I thought, I've come full circle, from a poor boy to a father passing happiness to his son. But then there were moments, small ones, moments I ignored or pretended to. One time, at a family gathering, I caught a glance. Clara and Mark, Just a second, but enough to feel something wasn't right. Clara turned away quickly, started talking to Amelia about her painting. I told myself, "You're just being paranoid." Another night, I came home late from a business trip. Clara was asleep. Her phone sat on the table. The screen lit up with a message from someone saved under a single letter. I picked it up, then put it back down, telling myself, "Don't doubt your wife. She's been through everything with you." And sometimes, I found myself sitting alone in the garage, a beer in my hand, the dim light falling on the scratch of an old car. I didn't go inside right away. I was afraid of the silence in that kitchen, the silence where Clara's laughter used to be. But I brushed it off. I was busy, expanding the company, planning Ethan's wedding. I told myself, don't let your imagination ruin your happiness. When Ethan announced he would marry Sophia, the whole family lit up with joy. Clara threw herself into the preparations. Flowers, venue, invitations. She was too excited. But I didn't want to question it. I thought, maybe she just wanted the perfect wedding for our son. Still, deep inside, I felt a crack. Not clear, not sharp. Just a sense that something in my family had shifted. A quiet shift, but enough to keep me awake on long nights. And then, as Ethan's wedding drew near, that crack took shape. It was no longer a feeling. It was truth. A truth I would have to face, whether I wanted to or not. I still remember that afternoon. Just an ordinary day. But it opened the door to everything I was about to face. That day, I came home early. The company had just closed a big deal. I wanted to have dinner with my family. I pushed the door open and called out, "Clara, you home?" No answer. In the living room, her scarf was tossed on a chair, her handbag left on the floor. That never happened. Clara was always neat, always careful. I walked toward the bedroom. The door was half open. Inside, laughter. A man's voice. Deep, familiar. My chest tightened. I pushed the door. Clara sat on the bed, phone in her hand. She was on a video call. On the screen, Mark. They were laughing, eyes glowing. Clara jumped when she saw me. She quickly ended the call. "You're home early," her voice trembling. I forced myself to stay calm. "You were talking to Mark?" She nodded too quickly, avoided my eyes. "Yeah, he just wanted my thoughts on some things at his new job." I frowned. Mark had never told me about changing jobs, but I didn't say it. I just nodded and walked away. That night, the family still gathered. Ethan talked about his project. Amelia shared her school stories. Clara served dinner with her usual care, but all I felt was distance. Thin, fragile, like a crack sliding between us. A few days later, while cleaning the kitchen, Clara's phone lit up. A message on the screen. "Thank you, last night was amazing." From M. I froze. My hand shook, ready to open it, but I stopped. I was afraid that one touch would collapse the whole marriage. I put the phone down, stepped back, my heart racing like I had just survived a car crash. That night, Clara came to bed. I looked at her for a long time, but she turned away, fell asleep like nothing had happened. I lay there, eyes wide open, drowning in questions with no answers. I started paying closer attention. Clara often stayed late, saying she had meetings. Sometimes she came home with a faint scent of men's cologne. Not mine. I asked softly, "You've been busy lately?" She smiled. "Just work, don't worry." Her voice was so gentle, I almost blamed myself for doubting. But then, one night, I stepped into her study. Her laptop was open, unlocked. Emails to Mark. Not explicit, but sharp enough to cut me open. "I miss you. Thank you for making me feel alive again." I closed the laptop, dropped into the chair, my chest heavy as stone. That night, I went to the garage, cracked open the 7th beer. I couldn't even taste it. For the first time in years, I felt powerless. The next morning, Ethan sat with me at breakfast. He handed me his house design, eyes shining with excitement. "Dad, what do you think? I want Sophia and me to have a home, just like you built for Mom." I looked at him. My throat closed. I wanted to tell him, "Don't trust what you see. Even this house is full of cracks." But I couldn't. I forced a smile. "I'm proud of you, son." When he left, I stayed still. A tear fell onto the drawing. I wiped it quickly, afraid to leave a stain. I tried once to confront it. One evening, Clara was heading out. I asked, "Where are you going?" "Meeting with the teachers," she answered too fast. I looked straight at her. "Are you sure? You've been different lately." She stopped, sighed. Then came closer, wrapped her arms around me. Her voice shook. "Gabriel, you're just being paranoid. I'm here, with you, with our kids. There's no one else." Those words almost made me believe. That hug, that tremble. I wanted to believe it was real. I wanted to believe I was imagining things. But the very next day, I came home early. Mark's car was parked outside. I walked in. Laughter drifted from the kitchen. I pushed the door. Clara and Mark sat side by side. Ethan's wedding papers spread across the table. It wasn't intimate. No embrace. But their eyes said everything. Clara jumped to her feet. "You're home. We were just helping Ethan with the wedding details." Mark nodded quickly, forcing a smile. "Yeah, nothing more." I looked at them for a long time. In that moment, I heard my heart break. But I didn't shout. I didn't rage. I just nodded and walked away. That night, I drove aimlessly on the highway. Headlights smeared across the rearview mirror. I felt like a man lost. I thought of Ethan, the boy who believed love could build a home. I thought of Amelia, the girl who still believed her mother was the most wonderful woman alive. I thought of myself, a man who had spent his whole life holding the family together, only to watch it rot from the inside. I pulled over, opened my notebook. My hands shook as I wrote. Day, month, year. I saw Clara and Mark, no more doubt. Ink blurred as a tear fell onto the page. From that day on, I was no longer the carefree Gabriel. I became someone else, wary, cold, but cracked on the inside. I ate dinner. I smiled. I listened to my children. But in my mind, I kept hearing those emails, kept seeing the look between Clara and Mark. And I knew this was only the beginning. Because the truth, no matter how deep you bury it, always finds its way back to the surface. From the day I saw Clara and Mark sitting side by side, my home turned into a stage play. Dinner still had laughter, but it was forced. I was still there, but only as a shadow. Ethan was caught up in the wedding plans, talking about restaurants, flowers, invitations. Every time my son spoke with excitement, my heart ached. He believed in happiness. And I sat there knowing this family already carried a lie that would never wash away. One evening, we were choosing music for the wedding. Ethan shared a list, asked for everyone's opinion. And of course, Mark was there. He laughed loud, slapped Ethan's shoulder. "Son, don't pick some old song. Go for something upbeat. Women love that. Trust me." The way he called my boy son made my blood boil. Ethan laughed. Clara looked at Mark with agreement. Under the table, I clenched my fists so tight my nails dug into skin. In that moment, I didn't feel like a father. I didn't feel like the man of my own house. I stayed silent. But the fire inside me had been lit. Clara grew bolder in her favoritism. One day, Sophia, Ethan's bride-to-be, asked me to help check the venue contract. I opened my mouth, but Clara cut in. "Mark's better with paperwork. Let him check." I froze. Right in front of my son and his fiancée. She dismissed me and handed my place to Mark. Sophia gave an awkward smile. Ethan nodded casually. Only I felt the weight of humiliation pressing down. That night, I sat in the garage alone, holding the wedding ring I once gave Clara, the metal cold in my hands. I asked myself, does this ring still mean anything, when the hand wearing it no longer belongs to me? Another time, I saw something I'll never forget. Clara was helping Sophia try on wedding dresses. I stood by the door, watching. Clara turned in front of the mirror, her eyes shining, her lips smiling. For a moment, I saw the woman I once loved, gentle, radiant. But minutes later, in the hallway, she pulled out her phone. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I miss you. See you tonight?" I stood only a few steps away, heard every word. That white wedding dress against those words of betrayal. It burned into my memory. I tried to talk once. That night, when the kids were asleep, I said, "Clara, if there's anything you need to confess, say it to me." She looked at me for a long time. Eyes I once thought I could read like a book. Now empty. She sighed, touched my hand softly. "Gabriel, you're overthinking. I'm here with you, with our children. There's no one else." Those words almost saved me. That touch, I wanted to believe it. I wanted to hold it like a lifeline. But the emails, the texts, the looks with Mark, they kept echoing in my head. I pulled my hand away, turned from her. Another night, Ethan showed me the vows he had written for Sophia. He read them with a trembling, honest voice. "I promise never to hide anything from you, not even the hardest truth." My chest tightened. I wanted to scream. Don't believe in promises. Even here in this very house, a vow has already been broken. But I couldn't shatter his innocence. I forced a smile. Told him his words were beautiful. When he left, I sat in silence. Tears fell onto the paper. The closer the wedding came, the heavier the tension grew. Mark appeared more and more, as if he were part of every decision. The menu, the wine, even the seating chart. He had an opinion, and Clara, always on his side. Once I snapped, "This is Ethan's wedding, not Mark's." Clara shot me a cold look. "You're too tense, Gabriel. Mark is only trying to help." I choked back my words. But inside I knew my place in this family was being stolen, piece by piece. I began to feel like a ghost, passing through my own home, loved by my children, but too blind to see the cracks spreading around them. Clara and Mark acted more confident, as if their betrayal had become the new normal. That night, I wrote in my notebook, day, month, year. Mark interferes in the wedding. Clara supports him. I'm losing my place in my own family. Looking at the crowded lines of ink, I felt like a man writing war notes. Except this war was happening inside my home. Another evening, at dinner, Mark suddenly brought up an old memory. "Kids, did you know? Back in college, your dad once fell asleep in the library. Your mom and I had to carry him back to the dorm." The whole table laughed, even Clara. But their eyes met, and it wasn't the look of friends sharing an old joke. It was the look of a shared secret. I gripped the knife in my hand, almost dropped it on the table. Ethan looked puzzled. "Dad, is that true?" I forced a laugh, nodded. Inside, I felt stabbed all over again. The tension had gone too far. The wedding was only weeks away, and I knew everything would explode. I didn't know when or how, but I could feel it. The storm was gathering over me, and this time, I wasn't sure I could stay silent. Ethan's wedding day looked perfect. White flowers lined the aisle. The orchestra played a soft love song. Guests laughed and chatted. I stood at the back of the hall, watched my son adjust his tie, his eyes glowing with happiness. Sophia in her white dress, nervous but radiant. Everything looked flawless. But to me, it was a stage, built on lies. As Ethan walked down the aisle, Mark clapped him on the shoulder, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Son, remember to smile today. This is the biggest day of your life." That word, son, boiled my blood. Clara stood nearby, smiling wide. Her eyes flicked to Mark, as if seeking approval. I clenched my fists until my nails cut my skin. Then came my turn. The father's speech. I stepped up to the podium, the microphone cold in my hand. It shook, hitting the stand, echoing through the hall. The crowd fell silent. My son's eyes, full of expectation. Clara's face, pale. And Mark, arms crossed, a smirk daring me to speak. I drew a deep breath, but my voice cracked. I had written a long speech, filled with memories, blessings. But holding this microphone, my hands shake too much. Because there's a truth I've kept for more than 10 years. Whispers erupted. Ethan frowned. "Dad, what are you doing?" I looked straight at him. "Ethan, marriage cannot be built on lies. I know this, because I've lived 10 years with betrayal inside my own home." The hall burst into noise. Sophia gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Clara shook her head, trembling. "Gabriel, stop, please." I pulled a notebook from my jacket, held it high, pages filled with scribbles, dates, times, places. My voice broke, but stayed clear. This is where I wrote it all down. Texts, emails, the times I saw it with my own eyes. The betrayer is Mark. Gasps, murmurs. The hall exploded. Mark froze, then forced a laugh. "Gabriel, you're insane. You're ruining your son's happiest day." I pointed to the book. I wish I were insane. But no, this is the truth. Ethan's face went pale. He rushed forward. "Dad, how could you say this? This is my wedding day." Those words cut me open. I nearly dropped the microphone. The room held its breath, waiting. And then, the double twist. Sophia, her face white as snow. Hands trembling, she pulled out her phone. She whispered, "Ethan, I wasn't going to say this, but this morning, when I was with your mom trying on the dress, I saw." She raised the screen. The message clear. "I miss you. See you tonight, Clara." The hall froze. Clara collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Mark went pale, lunging for the phone. Too late. Ethan staggered back, tears in his eyes. He looked at his mother, at Mark, Then at me. "Dad, is it all true?" I nodded. My vision blurred. The hall felt like a courtroom. Guests whispering, some shaking their heads. Mark tried to speak, but the contempt in their eyes shut him down. Clara cried without sound. I set the microphone down, walked to my son, placed my hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, the choice is yours. But never, never begin a marriage with lies." Ethan bit his lip, turned to Sophia. She held his hand, nodded through her tears. And right there, at the altar, Ethan said, voice breaking, "Today, mon cher, we can't marry. I need time to breathe, to understand." Sophia embraced him. No blame, only tears. The hall fell into chaos. Guests slipping out in silence. Clara buried her face. Mark lowered his head. Neither dared to meet a single eye. Ethan turned back to me, threw his arms around me, whispered, "Thank you, Dad, for telling the truth, no matter how painful." My tears fell on his shoulder. In that moment, I knew. I had lost everything. But I had saved the one thing that mattered most. My son's future. After the broken wedding, the house that once felt warm turned into a prison. White flowers wilted in the corner. The smell of wine still clinging to the tablecloth. And silence, so heavy you could cut through it. Ethan locked himself in his room for days. I heard him crying quietly. Sophia trying to comfort him. In vain. Amelia grew even quieter, cleaning up the remains of a wedding that never was. And Clara disappeared. Her bedroom door always shut. No family meals? Sometimes I caught her on the porch, hair tangled, eyes swollen red, a woman both pitiful and distant. One night, Clara stepped out, her voice low. "Gabriel, we need to talk." I closed my notebook, nodded. We sat in the living room, the same room that once echoed with our children's laughter. Now only the ticking of the clock. Clara broke down. "I'm sorry. I never thought it would end like this." I stared, silent. She choked on her words. "You don't understand. I was lonely. You were always working. I felt invisible in this house. Mark?" He listened. "I know it was wrong, but with him, I felt alive." I closed my eyes. Her excuses didn't ease the pain. They cut deeper. I whispered, "If you were lonely, why not tell me? Why choose betrayal?" She lowered her head, sobbing. Finally she said, "Maybe we should separate." I nodded. No tears, no anger, just surrender, a weariness that reached my bones. Days later, Mark asked to meet me. At a cafe, his face the same, but his eyes avoiding mine. "Gabriel," he muttered, "I'm sorry, I went too far. But you know, Clara needed something you couldn't give." I cut him off. "Don't justify, you betrayed me, our friendship, my family." He went silent. I locked my eyes on his, said slowly, "From now on, there's nothing between us." I stood, left him slumped at the table. A small, pathetic figure I'll never forget. But the hardest part was Ethan. One night, he sat on the porch, eyes tired. I joined him, waited. At last he spoke, voice breaking. "Dad, why did you keep it from me all these years? Why wait until the wedding?" I stayed silent, then sighed. "Because I wanted you to have a family, even if it was just an illusion. I was afraid the truth would kill your faith. But if I stayed silent, you'd repeat my tragedy." Ethan broke down, cried into my shoulder, like when he was a boy. "It hurts, but I understand." I held him, my tears falling onto him. And in that moment, I knew. I had saved the most important thing. The bond between father and son. Amelia came to me too. She handed me a drawing, a family of 4, but a crack running through the middle. I stared at it, my chest tightening. "Dad," she whispered, "our family, it won't be the same, will it?" My hand trembled as I stroked her hair. "It will be different, but one thing never changes. I love you." She nodded, clung to me, and I knew she understood more than she let on. Days passed. I packed my things. Clara packed hers. No shouting, no pleading. Just 2 people, once on the same road, now parting ways. Before leaving, I placed my notebook on the living room table. Wrote one last line. "Lies may live long, but never forever. Truth will always find its way." I closed it, set it down neatly, grabbed my suitcase. Ethan stood at the door, his hand gripping mine. "Dad, you'll always be the man I respect most." I smiled, hugged him. In his eyes, I saw hope again. Hope I thought I'd lost. Amelia ran up, pulled my sleeve. "Dad, When will you come home? Her words stabbed my heart. I didn't answer, just held her close, then turned away. As I stepped through the door, I heard her voice behind me, shaky. Dad, don't forget your notebook. I froze, turned back. She was holding it tight against her chest, like a treasure. I nodded, turned away again, let the tears fall. Behind me, a broken home. Ahead, a road unknown. But at least I had chosen truth. And though it hurt, it was the only road left, the only way to keep a piece of myself and to keep my children. I left that house on a foggy morning. The suitcase was light, but every step crushed memories under my feet. I didn't look back. Behind me was a broken home. Ahead, a road I didn't know. The first days in the small rented apartment, I had to learn the silence. No sound of knives in the kitchen, only water dripping from the tap. I poured coffee into a cup, reached for a second one, out of habit, then froze. That empty cup sat on the table, reminding me Clara would never sit across from me again. Just a small detail, but enough to make my chest tighten. Nights were worse. Silence thick as stone. I lay on a new bed, restless. Memories came back. Clara's smile in the beginning. Trips with Mark. Family dinners full of laughter. Now, just fragments. I didn't blame anymore. I just knew. I had to keep living, even if it meant living alone. Ethan visited sometimes. He spoke less, but his hugs, tighter. I knew he was healing his own wounds. Amelia called me every night, told me stories about school, and always ended with, "Dad, I still have your notebook." I never answered, just smiled. To me, that notebook wasn't proof anymore. It was memory, something my daughter carried, as a reminder of truth. One day, a colleague asked me, "Gabriel, do you regret it? If you'd stayed silent, you would have kept the family together, at least on the outside." I thought for a long time, then shook my head. A family that's only a shell isn't a family. He said nothing, and for the first time in months, I felt my chest a little lighter. One evening, I stopped at the old park, the place I once taught Ethan to ride a bike. I sat on a stone bench, watched the sky fade into dusk. In the distance, a young couple, leaning close, whispering promises, their eyes shining, just like mine and Clara's, once. My chest ached, but then eased. No hatred left, only a bitter smile, and a quiet peace. Love, promises, trust, all can break. But sometimes, because they break, you learn how to stand again, without lying to yourself. When night fell, I left the park, the wind cold against my face, but clean. I thought of the future, uncertain, imperfect, but true. And sometimes, true is enough. I lost a wife, a friend, a family whole, but I kept myself. And to me, that is what matters most.